The 2024 playoffs are underway, and the Golden State Warriors will be watching from the comfort of their own homes, because they won't be a part of it. Why? Well, let's just narrow it down to 3 words. They fell off. And this season was just a stark reminder that the good old days are all but over for the Dubs. You see, last season kicked off with a bang, but not the good kind, as tensions flared with Draymond Green throwing hands at teammate Jordan Poole. And the season hit a bitter end, where the Lakers delivered a crushing blow to the Warriors with a 122-101 victory in Game 6, sealing their fate and sending them packing in the Western Conference semifinals. A loss that not only dashed their hopes of a deeper playoff run, but also raised some serious questions about the future of the franchise. Could this have been the end of the Warriors' dominant dynasty, which saw them snag championships in 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2022? It seemed we got the answer to that question this season. Now, nobody was really expecting them to hoist the NBA championship trophy, but the consensus was they'd at least clinch a playoff spot. But the Warriors fell short, way short. They just couldn't find their groove all season, and when their playoffs hopes fell into their hands, they had butterfingers. We'll get to that later on. But first, let's go back a bit. You see, those early season missteps and absences, they added up, leaving the Warriors just shy of their usual dominance. Klay Thompson, the guy who was synonymous with sharpshooting and lockdown defense, hit a rough patch. He was the gold standard for every player wishing they could shoot like him or move off the ball like him. But ever since that Achilles injury, he was struggling to reclaim his former glory. He even found himself benched on some occasions. Then there's Draymond Green. Let's just say he's had his fair share of run-ins with other players. As the Warriors' fortunes decline, so does Draymond's patience. Too short, too hot-headed, not athletic enough, not a good shooter. But he has massive arms, a first-class basketball intellect, and a doggedness that made him an unnerving terror who devoured opponents' offensive systems whole, night after night. That's who Green is. He has also punched and kicked guys on occasions, or stomping on people's chests, as in the case of poor Domantas Sabonis. Let's just say Draymond isn't the most green player on the planet, and he took all that dirtiness into this season. And it didn't help the Dubs at all. Man, it's hard to wrap your head around the Warriors' fall from grace this past season. I mean, we're talking about a team that was practically synonymous with dominance thanks to the trio of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. These guys were stuff of legends, bringing home championship after championship to the Bay Area. But fast forward to the 2023-24 NBA season, and it's like a whole different ballgame. The Warriors went from being reigning champions in 2022 to barely scraping by as the 10th seed, fighting tooth and nail just to make it to the playoffs. Let's not neglect the fact that the Warriors built one of the NBA's most successful and impressive dynasties. Years back, pre-Steph era, the Dubs set a not-so-glamorous record for the most consecutive seasons without a playoff appearance since Wilt Chamberlain's era in the 1970s, a whopping 12 seasons. But the Dubs dynasty started back in 2009 when they drafted Steph Curry as the 7th overall pick. Despite some early setbacks with injuries, Steph made a splash, winning the NBA Rookie of the Year award and earning a spot on the NBA All-Rookie First Team. And let's not forget about his dynamic duo with Klay Thompson, dubbed the Splash Brothers for their insane long-range shooting. After some impressive seasons breaking and setting records, the 2014-15 season really put the Warriors on the map. With Steve Kerr at the helm, they finished with a record-breaking 67-15, and Steph was named MVP for the first time in his career. They went on to win their first NBA championship in over 40 years. And then came the 2015-16 season, where they shattered records left and right. A historic 24-game winning streak to start the season, a mind-blowing 73-9 record, and Steph becoming the first player in NBA history to win the MVP award unanimously. Although they fell short in the finals that season, but they weren't done. With the addition of Kevin Durant in 2016, the Warriors became even more formidable. They won 2 more championships in 2017 and 2018, dominating the Western Conference along the way. However, fate had other plans. Injuries plagued the team, with KD tearing his Achilles and Thompson tearing his ACL. Steph himself suffered a hand injury, and the Warriors missed the playoffs 2 seasons in a row, signaling the end of an era. However, they somehow managed to win the 2022 championship, and it looked as if it wasn't all over after all. But what happened next was a case of a massive fallout. Okay, 2022-23 wasn't all that bad. They weren't impressive, but they managed to make the playoffs, finishing in the 6th seed. But they fell in the second round of the playoffs to the Lakers. But the real drama unfolded off the court with Draymond Green's infamous punch to teammate Jordan Poole during practice. Speaking of Poole, he had his fair share of struggles on the court too. Turnovers, bad shots, you name it, he did it. The fans were calling for his head, chanting "Trade Jordan Poole" louder than ever. And guess what? The Warriors listened, shipping him off to the Wizards after the season ended. But amidst all the chaos, there was one shining beacon of hope: Stephen Curry. At 35 years old, he was still out there putting up insane numbers. But there's only so much one player can really do. If we are to look deeper, the Warriors' poor 2023-24 actually started when GM Bob Myers, the mastermind behind the dynasty, decided to call it quits after 11 seasons. That was a blow for sure, leaving big shoes to fill in the front office. And let's not forget about the Jordan Poole saga. After some serious chemistry issues, the Warriors made the tough call to trade him to the Wizards for Chris Paul. It was a bold move, but one they felt they had to make to keep the team together. They also had what you might call decent but mid-draft picks with Brandon Podziemski and Trace Jackson-Davis. But despite all the changes and shakeups, the Warriors just couldn't find their groove this season. Whether it was injuries, chemistry issues, or just plain bad luck, they couldn't seem to string together the wins they needed to make a playoff push. They kicked things off on fire, winning 5 of their first 6 games and showing good signs. But then, just like that, they hit a rough patch, dropping 5 of their next 6 and leaving fans scratching their heads. It's like they were living in 2 different worlds out there. One minute they were dominating on both ends of the floor, and the next they were struggling to find any scoring options outside of Steph Curry. And from there, they couldn't shake off the inconsistencies, and by the end of the year, they were sitting on a 15-17 record, and even a playoff berth looked too far off. Morale was down, and players like Draymond Green couldn't stay out of trouble. First, he had it with Rudy Gobert, earning himself a 5-game suspension, and the Dubs lost a key player. It gets worse. Just when Green thought he was back in action, he finds himself in hot water again, this time for striking Jusuf Nurkic in the face. That landed him with an indefinite suspension, and the Warriors were left to pick up the pieces without him for over a month. Not exactly what you want in the middle of an already shaky season. And if that wasn't enough, tragedy struck with the passing of assistant coach Dejan Milojevic. On the court, things seemed to hit rock bottom, and they were blowing away leads. Against the Clippers, they squandered a 22-point lead. They also blew an 18-point lead to the Denver Nuggets. In fact, as of the end of March, the Golden State Warriors were tied with the San Antonio Spurs for the most blown leads this season with 13. I mean, come on. That's just not going to cut it. Their perimeter defense has been shaky all season, and you can't expect to use that to get a deep playoff run. The Dubs ended up finishing 10th in the Western Conference with a 46-36 record. Despite a strong finish to the season where they lost just 2 of their last 12 games, it just wasn't enough to secure a playoff spot. They had to deal with the do-or-die play-in game against the Sacramento Kings, but it ended in heartbreak for the Warriors. I mean, they had everything on the line against the Kings, but they just couldn't seal the deal. They needed to win by at least 12 points to advance to the quarterfinals, but it never really happened as they were basically second best on the night. To make matters worse, this loss meant that the Warriors missed out on the NBA playoffs for the first time since 2021. Keegan Murray was on fire, dropping 32 points, and De'Aaron Fox added another 24 for the Kings. It was a tough battle, but the Kings came out on top with a convincing 118-94 victory. For the Warriors, though, it's a bitter pill to swallow. This loss marked the 3rd time in the past 5 seasons that they've missed out on the playoffs, including 2 eliminations in the play-in tournament. They weren't cut out for it. I mean, the Warriors committed 16 turnovers, gave up 15 offensive rebounds, and just couldn't seem to defend against those open 3-pointers. Klay Thompson had a rough night, missing all 10 of his shots, and even Stephen Curry couldn't carry the team on his own, finishing with 22 points. Steph, who once dropped 50 points in a pivotal Game 7 against the Kings last season, struggled to break free from Keon Ellis and the relentless Sacramento defense. Meanwhile, Draymond Green, who is known for his tough defense, found himself unable to stem the Kings' offensive onslaught, conceding a staggering 37 points in the 3rd quarter alone. And Klay, of all people, ended with 0 points. The Warriors had a rough night, getting outplayed and outmatched in almost every aspect of the game against a bigger, tougher, younger, and quicker opponent. It was a tough one, especially for a team with such a storied history of success. With 4 NBA championships under the belt and 6 finals appearances since 2015, the Warriors are used to being on top. But this season has been a different story. The loss to the Kings was a bitter ending to a disappointing campaign, leaving the team facing an uncertain offseason. Coach Kerr and the core trio of Steph, Green, and Thompson are now left to ponder the future. While the Warriors may harbor a desire to keep their core intact, the harsh truth is that holding on to the past could jeopardize their chances of securing another championship in the current era. No longer can they rely on the past near misses to console themselves. With a payroll and luxury tax bill among the league's highest, tough decisions lie ahead for the organization. The aging roster poses financial challenges, with players like Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins commanding hefty contracts. Aside from that, it was a disappointing season for the Warriors and their fans. The early exit from playoff contention hits differently for a team led by Steph Curry, who hasn't faced such an early elimination since his third season back in 2012. Back then, the Warriors were struggling, but since then, they've morphed into a powerhouse, clinching 4 titles in a decade and putting their names in NBA history. Just 2 seasons ago, they were basking in the glory of their 4th NBA title. But fast forward to 2024, and they couldn't even make it past the play-in tournament. So, what's next? Do we mourn the end of an era, or do we brace ourselves for what's to come? One thing's for sure, change is inevitable, whether we like it or not. We've seen eras come to an end like the Chicago Bulls, but theirs was mostly off the court issues than on the court. For the Warriors, there's a lot to ponder.